Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over the system design concept of relationships with databases, not to be confused with relational databases. We're just going to be focusing on the intricacies between object-oriented programming and how to develop the key relationships with databases. So, to be able to have us get started with the following concept, we have to understand the complex nature of relationships within a database, and they can often be dictated by choices between either choosing a relational or document database. Document. And when considering a relational database, one of the fundamental concepts to grasp is that of normalization. Which is a process designed to minimize redundancy and avoid undesirable dependencies. So we minimize redundancy. Such as if we already know exactly what specifically to be able to get for a specific profile that is designed within a domain, we're able to actually be able to build up a profile, for instance, based on job, title, education, career, and we already have those key data points that can always be inputted from the user side all the way to a database. And this concept is tied closely to the management of many to one and many to many relationships, which are omnipresent in relational databases. Normalization leverages the use of unique identifiers. Unique identifiers, which are really just complex strings that are already stored inside of a database to keep track of a user's profile. It's typically a random generated string, so that way that ID is already associated with one's content in particular. And if they want to be able to pull from a specific database, they already have that ID associated with that amount of data to be able to pull down. And a method to ensure consistency, redundancy, and ambiguity is to understand exactly how that ID is actually going to be associated with in the given context of the domain, and also the application one is also developing. To give an example, for instance, instead of storing the quote-unquote greater Seattle area directly in every record, we can just store a region ID that refers to a single entry in a regions table. So we can just put in because we already know exactly what we are asking where specifically the location is, and then we can update with other fields as well, such as title, job, education, and such. And these normalized unique IDs also serve another purpose. They form the basis of a join operation. Let me just move down here to explain what a join operation is. Which a operation in relational databases to allow combinations of data to be pulled from a database. A good example I can give is a profile name and picture. And in relational databases, IDs are very beneficial to be able to pull certain aspects of data. However, sometimes people will trade off between the relational database and the document model, largely to either have the question about flexibility and also expanding upon different forms of data and also the application needs as well. So let me just pull this out. Now, to be able to solidify your understanding about relationships and different databases, let's go over a concept example to help solidify. So let's consider a professional networking platform such as LinkedIn, where users can add their work, experience, education, and positions, and various backgrounds as well. In a relational database, a user's work history might be stored in a positions table. We can store information in a table. And meanwhile, document databases the relationships become embedded with the user's profile. So relationships become embedded with a user's profile. And this can not just only expand between social media platforms like Twitter, but can also apply to Instagram, Facebook, and other social media platforms that abide by a dynamic approach / ever expanding data. Ever expanding data. However, a document-based model would actually face some issues, namely if there was a company rebranding such as Twitter all the way to X. If there is every single post associated with the name Twitter on it, it has to be updated with X. So yes, just a quick concept example overview. So to be able to solidify our concept understanding, let's go over a practice problem to be able to further understand how we apply relationships between different databases, between relational versus document models. So in this example, we're going to be focusing on a resume builder, and we're going to be creating a professional social network platform which stores user profiles, including past job experiences and education. The company now wants to include a feature where users can add professional skills and recommendations, much like in the skills section of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn example. And so what we will be doing in this case is that we're just going to be going over the following steps. This is just going to be a brief overview, very simple process on what to do. So step 1, we're going to have to define entity relationships. Can we put the info in a table? Information in a table. With the second part also focusing on determine the types of relationships. Will an ID be needed to filter out the data. These are the three questions that is just a question that we just need to ask ourselves. And then we obviously need to do the next part, which is implement the relationship. And since we have the same social network, let me just move this really quick, apologies. And since we are focusing on a social network, in this dynamic where we have a user ID, it looks like it, just based on this one figure that we have for one of the many relationships. We can even put a tree structure at the same time, depending on job, experience, and education as well. Even the specific ones that we would have all pertain to the user. This is the data model that we use. We use a tree model. Let me use a different color. Words associated based on a user's ID, which could be a randomized generalized string, which would be a UUID. And then that UUID is also related with the positions, education, job, and then also a different series of educations as well. They would even specify between the different skills that one wants to also put, depending on the user's ID that is already set in place. So what we would do for relational databases, we create separate tables. We create separate tables. Associated with users' profiles. And so this is just an example of what we do for a resume builder where we apply a relational database. Let me just move this out and clean this up for you folks so you see exactly what I'm talking about. Clean this up. So this is tree model. This is the skills that we would section we would put in for a resume building profile, and then we have to ask ourselves based on the criteria on we need to determine the types of relationships and will an ID be needed to filter out the data. So that way we can know the difference between applying what type of database we need to put in. Do we need to put a relational or document model? Asking model / database. For every single data system is always going to need a database, cache, and queue. And we have to also consider the faults and failures. Always consider the faults and failures. Here we go. And so, yes, this is just our first practice problem that we have. Now, to go over a second practice problem to be able to help solidify our conceptual understanding between how to apply different forms of relationships depending on exactly what database model we actually want to put in, we're going to do the same type of concept, except we're going to be focusing on the job section for our resume builder. And what we need to really do, as usual, we need to ask ourselves exactly, we need to, one, define the entity relationships. And the second being implementing. And so, the relationships. For the first part, we need to define exactly what are the original entities, and are we adding entities to particularly the job, its description, and also the title of it. New entities are going to have their own profile associated. So we need to always ask ourselves, will an ID be needed? If so, yes, relational. If not, then document. And is there, no, hang on. And we also need to ask ourselves about redundancy. Is it there? Let's just move here. Is it redundancy? Is it there? And if it is, we go relationship. If not, we go document, and then we implement the relationship accordingly. So with relational databases, we implement a table, and then for a document model, we're going to implement as it's stated. For a document with ever expanding data and change. So yes, so this is our second practice problem in terms of understanding between relationships and different forms of databases. Thanks again for taking time to watch this. If you found this helpful, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. And as always, take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.